You know, the word a masterpiece gets used a lot lately to the point where it's kind of lost all meaning. It's always used about a movie that's just come out yesterday, and the person who's saying it's a masterpiece, they've only seen like 5 other movies. They've seen like Star Wars. They've seen like 5 other Star Wars, and then they saw like Oppenheimer, and they're like, this is why Oppenheimer is a masterpiece. You know, call me crazy. I feel like a masterpiece, it needs to marinate a little bit. It should have so much time should pass where it should marinate and ripen. And if the years go by and if you still look at this thing and you're like, hey, you know, that really made me feel something, then you might start venturing to call something a masterpiece. So yes, this is one of those times where I'm just going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm going to say it. Doggone it, I'm going to say it. House of Flying Daggers is an honest-to-God masterpiece. Now, Zhang Yimou, this guy had such a hot streak in the early 2000s, and it's really surprising that people don't talk more about him. You had Hero, you had House of Flying Daggers, you had Curse of the Golden Flower. I watched that one not too long ago, but I feel like Zhang Yimou has kind of got lost in the shuffle at some point. He directed the Olympics at some point. He did a movie with Matt Damon, which was kind of an English Chinese co-op thing. But the thing that I like so much about his movies, and what I like so much about House of Flying Daggers in particular, is so the guy sort of lays the groundwork with his stylistic choices. You know, he's got the signature bright colors. There's the sumptuous slow motion martial arts extravaganza. But once he sort of lulls you in with the style, he starts to sneak up on you. He starts to sneak up on you with a really just rich, emotional, just punch in the gut. By the end of the film, he delivers such a emotional punch in the gut after sort of, you know, again, reeling you in with the, I was reading the Wikipedia, and I think it was Roger Ebert who compared House of Flying Daggers to an opera. And I think that's really well put. There's something that has that sort of straight to the gut emotionality of the opera. Not that I go to too many operas, but if I did go to the opera, I imagine it would be something like House of Flying Daggers. Okay, the broad strokes of the story, it's 1859, I believe it is. It's China, and there's a number of rebel factions that have risen up against the kingdom, one of which is the House of Flying Daggers. And now there's these 2 buds, these 2 cops, and so these 2 police men, I guess you would call them, ancient Chinese policemen. They've been tasked with tracking down a member of the House of Flying Daggers. They believe this blind woman who works in a brothel, they believe her to be, or they suspect her to be the daughter of the former leader of the Flying Daggers. So one of our policemen, his name is Jin. Our 3 main players here, there's Jin, there's Leo, and then there's May. So Jin goes and he watches May, who is blind. He watches her dance, but he reels her in by pretending to be sympathetic to her cause. She's arrested. He frees her, but it's all a ruse. It's all a ruse by the cops to find the location of the Flying Daggers hideout. Or is it? Because there's numerous double and triple crosses that go on here, and as the story progresses, there's lots of twists and turns dealing with, you know, who's playing who here? Who's really pulling the wool over the eyes of the other? About halfway into the film, it becomes a love triangle situation, and at first glance, you might think to yourself, you know, is it halfway through the movie a little late to be introducing a love triangle? No. That's one thing that movies are really missing today, is a strong sense of romance. It seems like romance has sort of been made almost a faux pas to some extent. And so I feel like a lot of modern films have forgotten how to pull the heartstrings with a good romance. And you know, when America in particular does do romance nowadays, it feels like it's sort of neutered a bit with a tone of kind of cynicism and aloofness and sort of half committal to the premise of romance, where, you know, sometimes it's nice to just have a sort of full tilt, 100% sincere, like windswept romance like our three main actors here in House of Flying Daggers. They're just, they're laying it all out there. They are a raw nerve of emotion through and through. And by the end, it results in something very Shakespearean. The end is very Shakespearean in how it all resolves. I don't want to give it away, but that's another thing that feels missing in a lot of movies, especially ones, again, that sort of get bestowed the title of masterpiece all willy-nilly. Is there's no real emotion, there's no real sense of pathos. Shakespeare, forget about it. Who? I can't read. Gosh, what else? The action is pretty great. You know, we've sort of moved away from the sort of, how do you pronounce it? Wuxia? We've sort of moved away, at least there was a period of time in the West, in Hollywood films, where we were sort of trying to ape that style of action, you know, with The Matrix and all sorts of things. We've sort of moved away from that to the more like ripping off Indonesian martial arts, essentially. So things have become more of the everything post The Raid, you know, so everything's like John Wick now. And that's kind of a shame because, again, you have a sort of marriage between the style and the actual story or the material of the film. Like, you couldn't imagine this sort of sweeping romance then sort of transposed to the more gritty, in-your-face violent action of something like John Wick. And so because this is a romance, you've got lots of sort of delicate, sweeping choreography, very fluid, lots of slow motion, lots of moments that sort of put you right in the middle of the action. The use of CGI maybe dates the film a little bit. There's lots of sort of CGI augmentation to some of the scenes, lots of sort of the camera following, you know, it's called the House of Flying Daggers, so obviously somebody's going to throw some daggers, but then the camera will sort of follow it as these computer-generated daggers are whipping around all willy-nilly. I wouldn't say it's normally my preferred style of action, but because the story and the characters and the conflicts are so engaging, you sort of are just swept along. This is a film that has a real ambition towards beauty, you know, not just in the visuals, but also in the sort of poetic nature of the story and the action, but also just the actors. Ziyi, Zhang, you know, don't give me this gibberish about how beauty is relative or whatever. The woman is an angel. The woman is a heavenly angel come down to earth. And you can't tell me that there's any soul, any rational soul in the world who looks at Ziyi Zhang and is like, well, you know, everything's relative. Movies like House of Flying Daggers, they are made to articulate that type of beauty, that this sort of poeticism, the sort of lyrical nature of the film. You can only have a Ziyi Zhang in a movie like that. And when you have beautiful people who are able to convey very raw emotions without any sense of pretension or cynicism, it's a very rare thing. And it provokes the sort of reaction that, you know, to me should be reserved for the label of a masterpiece. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. House of Flying Daggers, just good stuff. Okay, goodbye.